Coming up on Destructoid, there's not one, but two new EverQuest games. Batman goes multiplayer in Arkham Origins, and Microsoft has decided to add an extra 53 megahertz to the Xbox One's GPU. Better watch out, Sony. Ooh. All that and more right now on Destructoid Live.
Welcome to Destructoid. I'm Tara Long.
And I'm Max Scoville.
Flamingos, huh?
Yes, flamingos, the national bird of Hawaii.
That's not true.
No.
But I believed you when you told me.
Have them there, I don't think.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
Hawaii's
also,
not a real place.
It's also not a country, so they don't really have a national bird. But
yeah.
You know, hey,
well, yeah.
Things can change. Stranger things have happened. We got
That's
a lot of very, not old news, but news that I feel like we could have just as easily been talking about like a decade ago.
Yeah, today is a nostalgia-filled news day. It is. Probably the biggest news was not one, but two new EverQuest games. Boy, those came out of nowhere, didn't they? Not really. We kind of knew those were happening. Sony Online Entertainment held their annual SOE Live event in Las Vegas this week, where they gave more info on both of these titles, and I'd say the response has actually been pretty good. Not bad. Destructoid's Nero Gonzalez happened to be in Las Vegas during the event and wrote up a preview with his impressions of the two games. The first one, which is EverQuest Next, is a reimagining of the old EverQuest, but with a lot of modern changes made to the core game. So they're revamping the lore. The characters and stuff, they're still going to be there, but the stories are going to be different. They're also introducing multi-classing, so players are going to be able to mix and match different abilities. So it's not like you just pick a class and you're just stuck with everything. There's also emergent AI now that doesn't rely on static spawn points, so enemies will always be on the move and you won't really know where to predict them. Likewise, the world itself, though it's persistent, will constantly be changing depending on the outcome of various quests and wars and stuff that happen in the game. So from a visual standpoint, you can see, I mean, it looks really nice. It's got this whole hand-painted look to it, sort of. The character animations in particular are really expressive. They look almost like Disney characters a little bit.
I want to point out, like, I like how the front, you're like, oh, she's wearing a Victorian gown, and then it goes around and you're like, with yoga pants underneath.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm kind of into the costume design. There's also day and night cycles now, which is pretty cool. That's something that was missing. This is running on the PlanetSide 2 engine, which explains why it looks so good, but this is all done using voxels, which are tiny little points that make up the game's environments. And basically this allows for insane levels of destructibility, so you can actually just blow a hole in the ground and start digging downward, and there'll be stuff for you to find.
Look at those trees, they're ruined.
Yeah, it's a giant ogre. Yeah, so it's kind of like Minecraft a little bit with the exploration and digging and stuff, which is never a bad thing, in my opinion. It also paves the way for user creation, which is going to form the basis of the second game they announced today, which is EverQuest Next Landmark. Now, Landmark is a collection of persistent, procedurally generated worlds that are going to allow players to build complex structures using the same tools that Sony is using to create EverQuest Next, which is pretty cool. And then all the best user-created creations will actually get put into the game. So it's sort of a collaborative process between the developers and the fans. Landmark is set to launch this winter as a free-to-play title. EverQuest Next has not received a release date at all yet. It could be a decade before we see it, but hopefully not. But yeah, it's pretty exciting.
We got a question here already. Will E says, any word on the pay model for EverQuest Next?
They didn't mention anything about that.
It's free to play. They did.
Oh, EverQuest?
Yeah.
I thought that was just the Landmark one.
I don't know. They're both.
Oh, I guess they both are. Yeah.
We did our homework
pretty cool
today,
then. Yeah, they didn't go into a whole lot of detail on how the payment structure is going to work for that.
I would be very surprised if, considering this is Sony Online Entertainment, if this didn't show up on PS4 at some point.
I would be too, and I think it would be awesome.
Especially because they're like PlanetSide 2 is basically the PS4 version is PlanetSide 2, except it's running on ultra high. Like I read that somewhere, which is cool. So anyway, moving on to other things that we could have been talking about a decade ago. QuakeCon is in full force right now, and since Quake is owned by ZeniMax Studios, they usually take it upon themselves to dole out some tidbits of information about their games, since they own id Software and Bethesda and all that. that. And there's bound to be plenty more news trickling out over the next couple of days since the show goes all weekend. But here is a quick little roundup of what we learned. First off, Wolfenstein: The New Order has been pushed back to 2014. Bethesda's head PR guy and ultimate sports fan Pete Hines spoke fairly bluntly and openly about it, saying that it's difficult developing on current and next-gen systems at the same time, and that the New Order has driving and stealth and story to worry about, in addition to shooting. And, you know, if they were making just a shooting game, having good shooting would be okay, but they really want to make sure everything is up to the same level of quality, so they're trying to just make a good game. Imagine that. As for other shooting games that have been delayed slightly more indefinitely, Pete also addressed some of the rumors about the long-awaited and still being awaited Prey 2. First of all, no, Prey 2 is not being canceled. Second of all, apparently it just wasn't where it needed to be, and wasn't meeting Bethesda or Human Head's expectations, so it's still being worked on. As for rumors of Arcane Studios taking over Prey 2, those are apparently nothing more than rumors, and there's apparently no truth to that. And Arcane has no involvement with Prey 2, and Human Head Studios is still taking care of Prey, and
that's interesting because rumors. I remember when they reported that rumor, apparently there were several different sources, many of whom worked at Arcane, who came forward and said that they were working on it. So either that was a complete fabrication or somebody's lying.
Weird. Lies.
Well, I guess either way, somebody's lying.
Next up in QuakeCon news, Bethesda announced the Elder Scrolls Anthology, which is every single Elder Scrolls game from Arena to Skyrim, as well as the expansion packs and DLC, all of them for PC, and it comes in a really pretty box, and you get all the maps. Look at those maps. You can put those on your wall and scare the girls off. And look at all the discs it comes on, because you can install with your CD-ROM drive. That'll set you back $80, though it's probably worth noting that if you're missing any of the Elder Scrolls games, the first two are very old, and they're also free to download, so you can go get those right now for your PC computer. And then Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim are all actually on sale right now, along with every other game from Bethesda and id's game library that is currently available on Steam. So you can go pick up the full QuakeCon pack for $90, which includes 44 full games. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
That's
ridiculous.
like $350 normally, and then they're like, we're having a festival of craziness.
Even if you don't ever plan to play all those games, just buy it. Trust me, you'll be glad you had them. All right, moving on. So Square Enix hasn't had the best of luck lately. 3 of their biggest games for the past year have failed to meet sales expectations. That's old news, despite being critically acclaimed. But that hasn't deterred them, according to a recent blog post by their CEO, Phil Rogers. He admits that the company has not been very transparent with its audience when it comes to exploring new business models, and says that that's something they'll try to be better about in the future. He also said that they do not plan to abandon core AAA console or PC games, and he added that in addition to Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts 3 and the new Thief game that's coming out next year, they're also well into development on a next-generation Tomb Raider sequel. This is exciting. Now, this news follows the other recent story that comic book writer Gail Simone is currently working with Dark Horse Comics on a canonical Tomb Raider comic that's supposed to lead directly into the sequel that they're creating. That comic is set to release on February 26th, 2014, which is my birthday. So my guess is that we'll probably be getting our first piece of info on the next Tomb Raider game sometime around then, either shortly before or maybe after at E3 or something.
Or at least just a hint of what direction it's going to go. If it's following
that'd
the
be
comics.
super cool. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I was so bummed by Square Enix being like, yep, all of our games were failures. They screwed up, because they made some of my favorite games last year.
I know, you love Sleeping Dogs.
Sleeping Dogs is incredible.
Hitman
I thought Tomb Raider was great. Hitman
Yeah.
was fantastic, and it's like they're just like, well, we goofed. Sorry, these didn't sell 8 million copies or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
And then they got their horrible mobile division, the worst. $35 for an Android game of Final Fantasy 3 or whatever. Terrible. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of comic books and sequels, there's some big news about Batman Arkham Origins this week, namely the inclusion of a multiplayer component. I know. Contain your rage. Tacked on multiplayer is always the worst, but Arkham Origins seems like they're doing something fairly interesting. Destructoid's Casey Baker has a nice write-up about the mode he played over on Destructoid.com, which is called Invisible Predator. The worst kind of predators, besides, I guess, the sexual ones. How it works is players are either put on one of 3 teams. Either they're a member of Bane's gang, or a member of the Joker's gang, or on the Batman and Robin team. So, as you might expect, the gang members are trying to kill each other. over gang stuff, and then Batman and Robin are trying to beat them up because they're criminals. The gangs compete for territory by capturing different checkpoints, and they're simultaneously fending off the competition, as well as keeping an eye out for Batman and Robin, swooping in out of nowhere with their capes and so forth. So it's kind of like the famous Splinter Cell Spies versus Mercs mode, except they've added like another team of Mercs. So the Mercs are fighting the Mercs, and they're fighting the Spies at the same time. The Spies are fighting both types of Mercs. Anyway, Batman and Robin have detective mode, as well as explosive gel and smoke pellets and batarangs. And I think the advantage there is you can really play much more stealthily. You stay up in the rafters and really try and sneak around appropriately. Meanwhile, the gang members are more like your typical third-person shooter goons with a standard selection of guns to pick from. And they also have enhanced vision, which is sort of like detective mode, except they're not detectives, so it's just enhanced. And it has to recharge, I guess it runs on batteries or whatever, and it can also be jammed. Meanwhile, the gang members can also get an edge during the match when they get the opportunity to turn into their gang's supervillain leader. So you can become either Bane or the Joker if you run to a certain point on the map and pick up a power-up that is hidden there if you're the first one to get it. I think tacked-on multiplayer is generally dumb and bad, but it sounds like Arkham Origins has really kind of found a good fit for the game, and it's at least a much more creative approach than what if we had a bunch of Batmans running around killing each other.
Gotham City imposters.
Yeah, exactly. This. I thought that was cute, but that was also stupid. But anyway, Arkham Origins is coming this fall to the 360, the PS3, the PC, the Wii U. But unfortunately, the Wii U is not going to be getting the multiplayer component because WB Interactive wants to focus on platforms with a larger multiplayer community. And I imagine a larger install base because the Wii U has not been selling so hot lately. So there's that. That's a bummer. All versions of Arkham Origins, including the 3DS and PS Vita Metroidvania side story Blackgate, will be released on October 30th. So if you are a Bat fan of Batman, then go bat by that on...
Sorry, I can't stop staring at the nipples on Robin. I feel like they're gonna reach out and touch me.
Yeah,
are you guys seeing
Chris
this?
O'Donnell
It's pretty
didn't
insane.
get a lot of work after that.
I know, but where are Batman's nipples? That's the Val Kilmer Batman. He's supposed to have them.
Yeah, I guess that is Val Kilmer.
Did somebody Photoshop his nipples out? That's
I think the nipples on Clooney were in Batman and Robin. That's from Forever, I think. Yeah.
I don't know my Batman
Costume
lore.
design.
I don't know my Batman nipple lore. I'm sorry, you guys. Moving on to more serious matters. Last episode, we talked about this new reputation system that Microsoft is implementing for Xbox One's multiplayer matchmaking, and now we have a little more info on how exactly all of that is going to work. So for starters, everyone on Xbox Live is going to be grouped into one of three categories based on their little sliding scale reputation. The three categories are good player, needs work, and avoid me. And that's going to be received based on the feedback that they get from other players. So anyone falling into the avoid me category is automatically blocked from joining matches with anyone from the other two groups, and the people who do fall into the good groups, or the needs work group, will have the option of deciding how precisely matched they want their opponent's reputation to be. So if you're in the good group and you only want to play with good people, you can do that. If for some reason you're worried about people wrongly flagging you, fear not, because the avoid me category is specifically reserved for the worst of the worst of the worst. According to Smart Match's senior program manager Michael Dunn, the system won't penalize you for a few bad reports. It could take hundreds or even thousands of people, depending on how much you play, in order to negatively affect your reputation. Dunn also says that Microsoft will begin sending cautionary messages to players who are close to being put in the avoid me category in an attempt to change their behavior. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this works. They kind of have something sort of like this now, but it's sort of a soft variant.
You remember when Diablo 3 came out and there was like that Korean dude who beat it in like 16 hours or something, like on Inferno, like he just completed the game, and everyone's like, how did you do that so fast? Someone's going to do that with the avoid me thing. Like somebody is going to, Xbox Live is going to be like up for the one for like a week maybe, and somebody's going to be like the worst kid.
Yeah,
it's going to be a whole new achievement. It's going to be.
But hey, at least we won't have to play with them. That's the good news here.
It's going to be like Bronson, just this awful criminal. Nobody wants to play with him.
Speaking of changes, Microsoft is continuing to make amendments to the Xbox One even after last month's big policy reversal, which we will not speak of.
Why do we report
Some of the recent hardware changes were detailed by Mark Whitten on the latest episode of Major Nelson's podcast, among which was an increase in the GPU's clock speed from 800 megahertz up to 853, which offers a 6.6 boost in performance, 6.6%, boost in performance. Now, technically speaking, that's not that much of an improvement, and technically the Xbox One is still trailing behind the PS4 in terms of raw power, but side-by-side gameplay comparisons have pretty much shown the difference between the two to be marginal at best. So I'm sorry, you guys, you might have to save your outrage for a later time. But hey, it's always good news to know that Microsoft is not above self-improvement, as they've shown in the past 2 months.
I want to see what the final product looks like compared to the product they announced initially, because they've overhauled some things.
It could be very different.
Yep. So it's going to be the Xbox 2 by the time it comes out.
Yeah,
Zing!
exactly.
Okay, so I like to talk about Star Wars, and when there's Star Wars news to talk about, I usually take that opportunity to talk about it. And today we've got a couple tidbits about Star Wars. Eurogamer recently sat down with Obsidian Entertainment's Chris Avellone to talk about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, kind of doing like a post-mortem looking back. And during that conversation, some fun information came up, namely the fact that KOTOR 3 had actually been in the early stages of pre-production. He goes into a little bit of detail about what they kind of had in mind. But the third entry in the series would have seen the Exile meeting Darth Revan and finding the true Sith Lords. Meanwhile, HK-47 would at one point get his legs dismantled, and you'd have to carry him around on your back in a little net thing like Chewie does with 3PO in The Empire Strikes Back. So obviously there's a lot of KOTOR fans out there who I'm sure are really dying for a new entry in the series, and with EA holding the Star Wars license as well as BioWare's reins, I don't think it's too far-fetched to imagine that they might put something together, but nothing's been announced yet. But if you're curious to hear about what could have been, that's over on Eurogamer. Go look that up. It's Chris Avellone. It's like a podcast. They just had him sitting around chatting. What has been announced, if the KOTOR 3 hasn't, it's Battlefront. That's right, Star Wars Battlefront by way of DICE, and we do have a release window now. It's 2015. Yes, 2 years from now. The reasons for this are twofold. One, because it takes a long time to make video games, and two, because I think they want to have Battlefront's release coincide with the release of Star Wars Episode 7, have a big old multimedia crossover thing. I remember when they did when they released Battlefront 2, that was around the time Revenge of the Sith came out, and they had like a bunch of like new clone troopers and vehicles and stuff you hadn't seen before, so it was kind of intermingled there. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did something like that. If I had to guess, I don't think we're going to have much to see for Battlefront for at least another year, but it is nice to have a release window. I would say maybe they tease that during E3. I think EA and DICE have a habit of revealing their big Medal of Honor Warfighter and Battlefield have always been kind of revealed around GDC time. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We have some questions. Let's see. Anton Bacon said, any speculation on the new IP from Ubisoft coming up this Gamescom? No, because it is a new IP. Therefore, what could we possibly know about it? It's not a sequel, so that's all we have to go on. Let's see. Booma Owl asked about Arkham Origins. Are Bane and Joker the only villain options, or are they just the ones that have been announced?
I didn't actually note that. Casey didn't talk about it in his preview. I hope not. That would be sort of weird if it was only the two.
Well, as a follow-up question, Devolver Digital asks, are Batman's nipples canon?
Why is Devolver Digital? It's a game publisher. And yeah, I guess sort of.
It's Fork Parker.
God damn it.
So regarding EverQuest, some people have asked questions about dicks in the game and how that's going to be handled. I'm guessing that they will have mods and stuff who go through and, tear down any phallic structures.
That's a good question. Requisite Zero says, how long do you think it'll be before Goonswarm or Anonymous makes Castle McHuge Dick?
That's a question I just addressed.
But you didn't read it out loud.
Oh, well, no, because he wasn't the only one who asked questions.
You look at like Goonswarm, and they're the guys who they're like, what if we destroyed some of the stuff you're not supposed to destroy in EVE Online? Like, let's just cause chaos. I mean, some men just want to watch the world burn by clicking on it repeatedly.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I'd be interested to see that. I've never been crazy about EverQuest, but the thing I like about MMOs is when a community kind of evolves around them. So.
Yeah. And if you build something, somebody else had a question about griefing and how they're going to handle that. It seems like you're going to have your sort of set area in the game that only you can control and nobody else can. So that's how that's going to work. Regarding the Xbox One reputation stuff, the Duke of Spook said, awful idea, Microsoft. I can picture it now. I piss off some kids by beating them in a game, and they get all of their friends list to say I'm cheating. So part of the crazy algorithm that they have for this is apparently looking back at your history of matches and seeing how that lines up with your feedback. So if you get, maybe like 5 negative feedbacks after one match, that's not going to automatically put you into the avoid me category. It's going to need to be like a persistent thing that happens over a long period of time.
So it's like calling the police, kind of.
Exactly.
there's a man outside screaming and bleeding on my doorstep. What do I do? And they're like, well, we'll send somebody by if you call 4 times from now.
Yeah,
That didn't happen exactly, but you know.
Theater Freak said, I actually wish Sony would implement that reputation system.
Yeah, that's
Not
true.
a bad idea. And then we've also got some, Devolver Digital has another question. Can we get a frank and serious discussion on Max's shirt? I was actually thinking while you were talking about the Star Wars story that you should get some of those really cool Star Wars shirts like that, but with big, flashy people and characters on them.
I haven't seen those. I follow a Tumblr that's anime Hawaiian shirts, and it's the worst things.
That sounds like the two worst things.
Yeah, I don't know who makes them, but they're just like the most insane and upsetting shirts. And the person who runs the Tumblr is just like, why does this exist? They're on this mission to find these hideous articles of clothing.
Oh,
Yeah.
shut it down.
People buy that stuff though.
PSOYE1 says, what game are you guys most looking forward to right now? In the immediate future, I'd have to say Rayman Legends.
Really?
Well, yeah.
I mean, besides GTA 5, I would say Destiny. Just next-gen games. Like, I want to play a next-gen console. Like,
yeah.
I'm antsy for that. I was kind of had that weird realization today that, like, you know, we analyze it and you look at it and you point at the things and you say, oh, that controller's sort of different and like, oh, it's going to have this system or that system or it's going to look sort of prettier. But I mean, it's gonna play a different type of game. You know, under the hood, there's more to work with. We've been playing on 6-7-year-old hardware for how long, and I don't know.
I'm not allowing myself to get excited about next-gen games just yet until I actually see them. One more question. Will E says, Max, as a fan of a property, would you rather see sequels to Star Wars games or a new IP?
That's tough. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see faithful, good new ones, but I mean, a new IP would be cool too. You know, I don't know. I'm open to either. I just don't screw it up, EA. I mean, I apologize for all the mean things I said. Just don't ruin my Star Wars games, please.
Please don't. Max will be ever so sad, and then I won't be able to buy him Star Wars shirts anymore. I'm going to find one of those, I promise you. That is all the time we have for today's show. I want to thank each and every one of you who tuned in to watch us live, and those of you who weren't able to because of other obligations. Maybe you should reassess your priorities
at school,
in life.
Teenagers,
Just
we know that.
Suggestion. If you want to apologize to us for missing it, you can always find us on Twitter. He is Max Scoville, I am Tara Longest, and the show is Detoid Show. We're going to be back here on Tuesday with another pre-recorded episode, so have a great weekend, and please do not get arrested and go to jail.
Try not to bleed on anything.